for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start off by saying that representing Fort Lauderdale, who just experienced over 1,000 years of flooding that we've never seen before, that we most certainly know that climate change is real, and we're feeling the effects. And we understand that the work that you're doing, Secretary, is very important, and we thank you for being here. My first question is, earlier this year, I had the privilege of accompanying Vice President Harris to Africa to build on the commitments made during the U.S.-Africa Leadership Summit last December. During her travels, the Vice President announced over $7 billion in private sector and U.S. government commitments to promote climate resilience, adaptation, and mitigation across Africa. Last month, Beijing announced a major grant to offer South Africa with solar panels and generators. To what extent is it essential to improve our climate support of Africa to compete with China?
You know, personally, I'm speaking personally on this, I don't think that the choice we make with respect to Africa ought to be just based on what China's doing. It ought to be based on what we ought to be doing and what all of us ought to be doing. Africa, I mean, there are 48 sub-Saharan African countries, 48, that equals 0.55% of emissions. They're not causing this problem. But 17 of the top 20 impacted nations by climate are in Africa. Now, if we don't stop and think about that in terms of global responsibility and global politics, we're really missing something. And right now, I find the tensions between global north and global south are growing. And food production in Africa is threatened. Water is threatened in South Central Asia and Africa, various places. And this is why the congressman who was speaking earlier about showing on his charts, you know, there's only one group of people in the world that I know of who are busy trying to tell people that this is not happening and it's fake, and somehow we're missing something. Only one group of people, and they're here in Washington, and some of them spread around the country. The fact is that all around the world, smart people, people who lead countries, who are responsible for the lives of millions of people, just like you are and we are responding to the clearly defined crisis of climate. So I think we have to look at this beyond China. I think we have to look at this in the context of what's our responsibility to the future, and what's our responsibility to our fellow human beings, and how do we deal with a crisis that has been brilliantly described over these last 30 years or more, where everything predicted is happening, only it's happening faster and bigger than it was predicted.
My second question is, according to the Biden-Harris administration, national security strategy, no region impacts the United States more directly than the Western Hemisphere. In June, Haiti experienced intense flash flooding, rock slides, and landslides that destroyed thousands of homes and killed over 50 people, combined with the ongoing humanitarian crisis and substantial gang violence. Many Haitians are looking to flee the country. Secretary Kerry, as the Biden administration focuses on the root cause of migration, can you describe how taking action on climate crisis can help bring stability to our nations and other nations where their citizens are looking to migrate?
Thank you so much for that thoughtful question, and it's really a major, major problem, because there are now climate refugees already today who are moving across borders and looking for different places to live. Some of the people, not all of them, but some of the folks coming from Central America and South America fit into that category. There are folks who used to farm, who now find they can't farm the products, the goods that they were farming, and so they're migrating. And one of the things that we learned during the course of the war in Syria was 1 million people moved into Damascus, which greatly complicated the war, but then they began to migrate and became a political tool, actually, and were sort of pushed to migrate into Europe and had a profound impact, a negative one, on the politics of Europe as a result. So this is a major issue, and it's one we have to really pay attention to.
Secretary, I want to ask you one question before we end, which is imperative. In April, Fort Lauderdale, which is in my district, witnessed unprecedented flash flood caused by the highest record rainfall in one single day. The flooding resulted in significant property damage, the closure of the airport, and shortages of gas all across South Florida. Recently, ocean temperatures in Florida Keys soared to 96 degrees, highlighting the impact of the rising temperatures on the region's marine ecosystem. Can you explain to us why this is happening and what is causing the increased weather and extreme weather, since there are people who don't believe in climate change?
Well, thank you again. I just might point out that I just saw this article this morning that Farmers Insurance has pulled out of Florida, affecting 100,000 policyholders. And the reason the insurance company has pulled out is because this unprecedented change in weather patterns, et cetera, has affected their ability to be able to make policies and for people to be able to afford those policies under the current circumstances. This has been a predicted happening. I mean, everybody's been talking about the potential impact on insurance, and now it is happening in various parts of the world. So, I mean, the reason, as I said earlier, 90% of the heating of the planet, which is documented, goes into the ocean. And that warming of the ocean then increases the moisture that rises from the ocean and travels around the planet with the planetary winds. And when it decides to fall in rainfall, it goes into the it is in much larger amounts than ever before because of the increase of the moisture. It's changed wind patterns and weather patterns, and the heating has other ancillary effects.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Issa for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.